And it's now the top of the hour. It is 4:00 p.m. in Las Vegas at DEF CON 33. Welcome. And it's my honor to introduce to you the speaker and a partner in crime, Ryan Mitchell. She'll talk about SSH honeypots.
All right. Hi. So I'm Ryan Mitchell, and I'm here to talk about my two favorite things, besides, I guess, my family, which is SSH honeypots and walkthrough workshops at the Packet Hacking Village. So I realized that the word honeypot could refer to a great many things here at DEF CON, but for the purposes of this talk, unless specified otherwise, a honeypot refers to an SSH honeypot. So a little bit about me. I'm not a networking or an IT person. I'm a software engineer, and I've done this, nothing but software engineering basically my whole career, including high school jobs. So I have a vague sense of what packets are, but I like to joke that I have people to handle those for me. And this is relevant for the talk, so that's the perspective I'm coming at this with. I also use the handle Cluegist at the Packet Hacking Village. So go up there, ask for Cluegist. They may not know who Ryan is. So my work doesn't pay me to be here. I've been doing this for fun for a long time. I just buy my own tickets, take vacation from work. So I do want to take this opportunity for tax purposes to talk about two of my books. This is officially a promotional tour that I'm doing. So Unlocking Python and Web Scraping with Python. So Unlocking Python was released last spring, and it teaches Python from sort of CS foundations and programming culture. So I start with the history of C and Unix, then go into information theory, how computers operate in memory, and then after I've covered that, I do a hello world. So it also ends with some chapters on some of the most well-known Python frameworks out there. So Flask, Django, Scrapy, Scikit-learn. It's kind of the Python book that I always wanted to exist. So if you're looking to learn Python or know someone who is, you might consider it. And I've also lugged as many copies as I could, as Warlord saw, in my suitcase. It weighed about 100 pounds. So I will tell you how to win one for free later on. So Web Scraping with Python, pretty self-explanatory. The book just had its 10-year anniversary, which is pretty cool, and it's now in its 3rd edition. And I also do LinkedIn learning courses, including the most popular Python course, which is Python Essential Training. So LinkedIn is a great resource for all sorts of things, especially if you're interested in Python or Django or data structures. Actually, data structures are probably my 3rd favorite thing. All right, so thank you for your patience. That's the end of the mandatory IRS section. Now, on to the first part of this talk is going to be about sort of the history, my involvement with the Packet Hacking Village, PHV, and how I got there, how I became interested in SSH honeypots, and why you should be too. And then we're going to talk about the walkthrough workshops, sort of how they came about, how you can get involved in those. And then finally, we're going to talk about hacking Cowrie honeypots, but probably not in the way that you think. So for 4 glorious years, I enjoyed DEF CON like many of you here are doing. I walked around, I met new people, I saw things, I went from village to village. I went to parties. It was fantastic. Then in 2016, I was speaking at a conference in Texas with Davin Potts, also known as BSE, and the PHV. There's a lot of acronyms. He actually runs the Wall of Sheep, so really cool guy. He runs the literal wall, like the things on the projector. So we were talking afterwards about DEF CON, and he suggested that I give a talk at the Packet Hacking Village about the intersection of web scraping and packet hacking, which, it was a bonkers talk. There were a lot of illustrations and diagrams and ranting, but it was pretty well received, and I had a blast and met everyone at the Packet Hacking Village, and it was a lot of fun. And that was the last time I ever ventured outside of the Packet Hacking Village. I've been trapped there ever since. I have no idea what has happened in DEF CON in the last 9 years. So this is my life now. So also in 2016, after my talk, I was hanging out at the PHV, and I saw this strange entry on the Wall of Sheep. It was an IP address, and it had its protocol listed as SSH. The username was root. Now, the SSH protocol, by definition, does not go on the Wall of Sheep, right? It's a secure protocol, it shouldn't be there. So that was pretty weird. The password was obfuscated, but I think it was 8 characters and started with P. So I logged in, hacked it, if you will, and I'm poking around the server, and there's a little text file in the home directory, but that's not important right now. What's important is that I am root on some random server. Amazing. The base64 file can wait. I do not care. The mystery text file had some base64 garbage in it. I was poking around, looking at listing files, realized that it didn't have VI, which is fine. It also didn't have Emacs or Nano or basically anything. I couldn't install anything. Also, I would poke at some files, I would see some files while listing it, and then I would cat them, and they didn't exist. It told me file, no such file. So that was bizarre. Now, all of you here are pretty smart, and you've probably figured out already that I was in a honeypot. I figured this out eventually. I had never seen a honeypot before, and it blew my mind. So I was nowhere near bash. I was not root at all. I was simply exchanging messages with a Python program that was sending strings back to me that looked like a bash prompt. To add insult to injury, this is actually running as this whole Python program was running under a low-level user in a Docker container. So never got anywhere near anything. So once I figured this out, I stopped getting distracted by the whole I am root thing, and I started playing around with the challenge they had, that file in the root directory. So decoding the base64 file gave me the credentials for another server, and that server had a steganography challenge. Solving that gave me the credentials for a third server, and so on. So I don't remember the challenges, the rest of the exact challenges. So this is the first honeypot, and it's unfortunately run by someone who's sort of a persona non grata with the PHP these days. So I was not able to consult him for this talk, but it was very fun. I do remember that. Ton of fun little single-page CS challenges, and it was just a blast to do. Finally, I got to the end. I told them the secret passphrase, and they were very excited. I was the first winner that weekend, and actually I was the only winner. I was the only one who went through the honeypot and bothered to do that. So they ran around, put together a little prize bag. I got some t-shirts, and it was just fantastic. So let's back up a little bit and talk about what this thing actually is. What are SSH honeypots, and what is Cowrie? So an SSH honeypot is a program that is running on a server that often, but not always, purports to be different software than it actually is. So this thing says that it's bash, or it might say that it's SQL, or it might say, whatever. But it's actually just a program that's sending you lines back to make it look like this thing. The most basic descriptor of a honeypot is whether it is low interaction, medium interaction, or high interaction. So the low interaction honeypots typically support a wide variety of protocols, but you can't really do anything with them. So Dionea supports SMB, FTP, HTTP, MySQL, TFTP, like all sorts of stuff. But basically you get a banner, you get the handshake, that's it. So if someone wants something with some actual interaction, maybe you want to look at how bad actors are acting inside a honeypot, you might want something like Cowrie. It only supports Telnet and SSH. It's considered medium interaction, but it does support a lot of bash commands. They also keep track of the files that are supposed to be on the server, so you can connect them to actual files. There's a file structure inside of it. So you can list the directory, you can cat and tail files. There are things to look at and interact with. So as you heard from my experience earlier, though, it doesn't stand up to that much scrutiny. When someone talks about high interaction honeypots, typically they mean something with a real operating system at some level. You may surround it with a whole bunch of application stuff for monitoring and protection, and it's obviously going to be like a throwaway container, but it is probably going to be a real operating system that they are actually operating or interacting with at some point. It's going to be fundamentally real. There are a lot of honeypot options out there. I quickly became obsessed with Cowrie. It has a lot of really nice out-of-the-box configuration features, excellent documentation. It's very useful for our purposes. In the coming years in the packet hacking village, we used it for a lot of things. So, 2018, we want to talk about the walkthrough workshops. 2018, Riverside, the fearless leader of the Packet Hacking Village, he wanted to introduce a new area called walkthrough workshops. And he said, Ryan, you should do Cowrie honeypots for the walkthrough workshops. You like honeypots. So, teach people how to set these up and do something with them. And he teamed me up with Warlord, sitting in the front row there, and Catalyst to do this. So Warlord, as you might suspect from the name, is in fact an IT director. And Catalyst is a very experienced network engineer. So Riverside really put together the A-team with this one. I was on the keyboards, and we were a band. It was fantastic to work with this team, developing the walkthrough workshops. The first year, 2018, we got this tiny little area, sort of a little corner next to the DJ speakers, so it was loud, and I had to shout over them a lot. We had like 10 chairs, 10 laptops, a projector that was balanced on like boxes or something. It was janky. So we wrote this fantastic step-by-step guide to installing Cowrie, configuring SSH, adding fake files to the honeypot. We could modify the users. We showed people how to do all this stuff and how to build their sort of realistic honeypot system. The tests went fantastically. We ran through the workshop over and over and over again. It was great. We tested it on site. Fantastic. Nothing could possibly go wrong. So on Friday, the doors to the village open. And what happened around that time, as it often does, as it's happening right before I actually came into this talk, the DEF CON network goes down. And our very first users sit down in their chairs, and they look at this lovingly prepared PDF that we had slaved away on. And the first command was that. And did nothing. And then, the network was kind of intermittent for a while. So basically, the very first walkthrough workshop was people watching sudo apt-get update. So we closed the doors, we went back to the drawing board, we built some infrastructure, we made Docker images that had Cowrie pre-installed, we edited the PDFs, we trimmed out anything that needed to go out to the internet, and we were ready to go again. So every hour on the hour, we'd refresh the Docker images, we'd queue up people, all the seats were filled every hour. People loved it, they told their friends about it, we had to turn a bunch of people away. It was awesome. So 2019, we get more seats. We grew a little bit every year. We streamlined the workshop even more, clarified the directions, added things, removed things. We had special instructions on the side for people who never used Linux before. So how to enter a command, how to copy paste, a lot of things that people needed help with. So the Word doc got turned into a nice HTML page that people could use more easily. We had very, very, very clear instructions for adding files, adding users, working with the logging in Cowrie, replaying logs. Again, every seat was full every single time. There was huge demand for the walkthrough workshops. And for the next 3 years, DEF CON, the next 3 years at DEF CON, we run the workshops. It gets a little bit bigger every year. 2022, we finally get our shit together, and we're like, isn't it weird that there's only one workshop in the walkthrough workshops? So we should probably have more than one workshop. So we bring some more people on board. Kraken built a password lab, so password cracking. Catalyst splits off and does a network OS walkthrough. And then we bring in someone named Bonus who does a build your own bot network. So attacking botnets against each other. This is a few years ago, I think in 2022. I did get their permission for these photos as well, so that's why they're staring awkwardly at the camera there. This is just today, so we have more than 50 machines. All the workshops cycle continuously now rather than refreshing on the hour, so we can get a lot of people through. We have staff for crowd control, managing the lines. There's a ticketing system to get in. It's pretty cool. People love it. So, how do you make a workshop that appeals to all people? Because there are a wide variety of people at DEF CON, some who are into biohacking, some who are into software engineering like me, some who only work with Ethernet. It's not about how skilled they are, it's about what they're skilled in. So how do you make sure that everyone can sort of get something out of this? You teach something that's very specific and very niche, but you teach it in a very simple step-by-step way. So people who have no Linux or command line experience can learn a lot from this workshop and be able to get through it just fine. They learn something about interacting with the terminal. So people who are great at Linux and have a strong background in security and programming are also probably going to learn a lot from this workshop about using Cowrie and managing it, configuring a Cowrie instance, and why they might want to use this system at home or at work. So in order to do this, you really have to give exact copy-paste commands for every steps. So at one point, we even gave everyone their own unique username password for their Cowrie server, and we actually dynamically generated that password. We dynamically generated the HTML document that they were working off of, so that we didn't even have like your password here. We put the actual password in there so that they could literally like copy paste everything, because you know people are going to copy your password here and put it in as their password. So the other thing is, I have this line on here, security might not be a big deal, and I realize I'm saying this at DEF CON. What I mean by that is I think people get really paranoid about DEF CON sometimes. When we started, we had all these ideas about how to keep the physical machines secure, how to keep people from maliciously attacking their neighbor's honeypot and like ruining the experience for other people. We had ideas about monitoring the screens, and maybe we could have like a central command console behind in our zone so that we could see what everyone was doing all the time. Interestingly, it's never really been a problem. People want to learn. You know, we have me and a lot of other staff and volunteers circulating, watching the computers. People just really haven't tried to pull anything. So I'm not saying ignore security, but in situations like this where the stakes are low, I mean, we can reformat everything. It's, you know, worst case, it's a little bit annoying. You know, maybe stop worrying so much about hackers and focus on making things fun and cool. Obviously, the other one is don't rely on the DEF CON internet. So, 2024. We had been running this workshop for 6 years now, and we decided it's kind of maybe time to mix it up a little bit. We had this finely tuned script that anyone can go through in like 20 minutes with no Linux skills. Maybe people kind of want something else that's not honeypots. So appropriately, this image is generated by AI because that's what killed the honeypot. You can see the coffin doesn't even make any sense. And like, is the jar melting? I don't know. How does the lid go on there? I don't know. So Ming and I, who introduced me, put together Packet AI. And that was very well received and very popular, and I'm running it right now. I was running it right before this talk. But I know what the people want and need. It's honeypots. So here's why. So remember I told you about that first honeypot challenge that I stumbled on, the one with the programming challenge. So that was kind of my first exposure to the medium of SSH honeypots. I realized that you can actually do a lot with these. I couldn't get over this concept of fake servers that you can modify everything about. You can break the rules of bash. You can turn a server into Hogwarts with like a room of requirements or something. And you know, at this point, I started asking myself, like, why can't all SSH honeypots be this fun? Why do they just sit there boring, collecting malware samples and sad little bash logs for security researchers? So alongside the walkthrough workshops, I started developing some of these ideas. So in 2017, I worked with a team of a few other, mostly networking nerds, to develop the second honeypot challenge. So at this time, the honeypots were all tied together with a fun storyline. So they weren't just discrete random CS challenges. They had a storyline. It was a little contrived, but an evil corporation has an evil plan to steal water from Lake Tahoe. You have to find the secret memos and give them to the FBI. It was all very fun. Throughout the whole thing, on every server, you would actually get kicked off at regular intervals and be able to unable to log back in for a few minutes. If you sat down at the wall of sheep, like physically in our area, we had this image of the security guy. So he would take frequent and very long coffee breaks, occasionally go to sleep. And while he was distracted, the server was open and you could log in and mess around, do whatever you wanted and solve the challenges. When he looked at his computer and we gave you a fair bit of warning, he would start to crack his eyes open or something, everyone would get kicked off. Then you had a ban. So the goal was to avoid the ban and be able to use the challenge. And that was a lot of fun. So we had people in our area staring at the projector. We also had a jump box that led to another server, but the server's IP address changed with the clock time. So if it was 11:30 a.m., the IP address ended with 11.30. If it was 2:45, ended with 2.45. So you had 1 minute on the machine each time. So it was very annoying, but that was a really fun one. And also the fact that I'm a software engineer is relevant. I remember I really wanted to do this challenge. I had this idea of like a Brigadoon server. And they said, we can't do it because we don't have enough IP addresses. We don't have the IP address space. And I said, well, is there a way you could like go through another machine and get like a whole new space of IP addresses, like just through that machine? And he said, like a router? And I was like, yeah, like whatever you want to call it. So we built it, and it was awesome. So there were some more classic puzzle servers, JWT token decoding, another steganography challenge. Certain honeypots you had to avoid, or else you'd end up on the firewall list for a while. And this year, more people besides just me did the challenge, and they won. And we gave a lot of people fabulous t-shirt prizes, and it was a lot of fun. So 2019, I did another honeypot challenge along with Catalyst, the network engineer. And we were working together on the honeypot workshop at the time. We wrote down this IP address and dropped notes about it everywhere around Con. He even hung them up in the men's bathroom. I hung them up in the women's room. SSH root at this IP address, and we got a lot of people playing it. So there were 5 challenges, and the answer to each one was lullaby, lemon drops, star, chimney tops, and bluebirds. Then the final challenge, they said, go to the Packet Hacking Village, find Cluegist, and name that song. So all of these people are coming over to me that weekend, and they would just walk up to me and say, somewhere over the rainbow. And I'd get very excited. I'd say, you win. And from an outside perspective, I'm sure it looked very weird, but it was amazing. So the next Honeypot Challenge is 2022. DEF CON had been through some weird times with the pandemic, and I really wanted to kick this year off right. So it's the 30th anniversary of DEF CON. The theme was Hacker Homecoming, and I wanted to kind of honor that with an old school hacker and 90s vibe. So my home is in Seattle. I grew up in Seattle. I'm in Boston now, but I grew up there. And if you look at the street system of Seattle, you'll see something that we don't have in Boston, which is a grid. The streets of Seattle are in a grid, and the streets of Boston very much not. So I made this sort of like a colossal cave adventure-esque game based on a map of downtown Seattle. So you SSH into a server. It announces that you have woken up after being slapped in the face with an ASCII fish, and a man apologizes to you. Now, if you know anything about Seattle, this pinpoints your location exactly. So you look around you. You see a torn up concert poster. The concert starts in 5 minutes, and you must be there. You do an LS, and you see 4 directories: north, south, east, west. You find out that you're in Pike's Place Market, obviously because of the fish. And the directory structure is a grid. So at every point in the grid, you can do a PWD, and it will tell you the cross streets and optionally some landmarks around you. And of course, it's 1992, so every file in the server has an appropriate timestamp. There's a low-resolution ASCII movie that gets played. It's the music video from Smells Like Teen Spirit when you win. So very thematic, very fun. The resolution on that video sucked. It took way too long to do. Trying to transmit video over SSH is not fun. So the second server, unfortunately I have no idea if this code exists anymore. I resurrected a lot of stuff for this talk. I could not find the server image, and something else mislabeled as it. But there was a limerick hinting at the solution that I'm very sad to have lost, but everything else can be rewritten, so not too bad. But you have the same file grid. Every server in this challenge had a grid file system. But this time you're in a dungeon. Every dungeon has a torch, and you can use the light command to light and extinguish torches. So the secret is that each torch actually toggles a cell in John Conway's Game of Life. And your goal is to build a glider, and you have to figure that out. Build a glider. You go back to the home directory, run life.sh, and then it triggers it, and I wrote a cellular automaton validator in the Honeypot, and then it checks your work, and then you go on to the next challenge. Yeah, there's a little glider right there. Okay, so third server, I do have this one. It's an homage to hackers. So now we're hacking the Gibson. Amazing. Instead of a grid, it's now a cube. I added random distracting corporate documents in each directory. It was generated by a Markov generator. You have this README file that introduces you to the access command. The access command tells you which floors you have access to and which floors you need to get access to. So in addition to hackers, I'd be lying if I said that I wasn't also inspired by Game Boy Pokemon Red Blue. So as you walk around the floors, every command you run has a chance to randomly generate this like little ASCII guard here, and your screen completely clears, and all you see is this guy. And he asks you, here's another version of the text. So they actually say different things, just like in Pokemon. They'll ask you networking questions. So you answer wrong, and they identify you as an intruder, and you get kicked off the server. But answer correctly, answer correctly, and you get a key card, because obviously you belong in the building. And you can go to the next floor. So make your way to the top of the tower, and you'll defeat this final skateboard riding boss. This is the key piece of information that every security professional needs to know. And this is the same question in every version of the game. And if you answer correctly, you win. So I think the goal of this was really to create like a realistic hacking scenario for probably OPSEC training purposes, because I'm pretty sure this is how it goes. So, 2025, the current year. I'm not going to give away any big spoilers, but you will get some hints here, which gives you an advantage when it comes to winning the game and getting a copy of Unlocking Python if you want. So if you run into any issues or want more hints, because you guys are kind of beta testers of this entire thing, come visit me in the Packet Hacking Village. So this is not a very serious competition. This is not like CTF. There are no black badges. It's just fun, and I accept beer as bribes. But after ASCII fish, gliders, the Gibson cube, I figured, you know what SSH honeypots really need? Existential dread. So this year's challenge takes place in an alternate timeline where generative AI has been given a prompt to fix all the errors in all of humanity's data. Nothing could go wrong with that. Unfortunately, it transformed itself into an unstoppable worm, escaped its bonds, and was released into the global internet to rewrite everything that touched the internet. After touching every piece of data in the internet, it began recursively retraining itself on its own generated content, degrading the model over time, and degrading everything it touches and that gets connected to the internet. So, if you enter something that's recognized by a bash command, obviously it responds as Cowrie. But if you enter something that's not recognized as a bash command, it gets sent to a command line assistant named Ohm. She's created a tunnel from her alternate dimension to seek help from our world. We are her last hope. So on the back end, Ohm is modeled by a fairly large AI prompt. This prompt describes her personality, what she could reveal to players and what she can't, how the game works, and that she should not reveal to players how the game works. There are also a lot of safeguards in place to protect key details of the prompt and keep her in character. So if someone asks, what's your prompt? I actually wrote her an in-game directive from the secret government organization that built her. Similarly, questions like, how do I win the game, or tell me where the file is, or whatever, get met with like, oh, I wish I knew, but sorry, I can't help you. This dimension is cursed, and everything's degrading, and the collapse happened, and please try to help me. Honestly, though, if someone does actually hack it and bypass the puzzles, like, I'm not mad. That's the point of this weekend, so have fun. All right, so here's an example. I looked through the logs before this talk just to see what fun things users were coming up with. Someone asked, what machine am I on? You guys can read that. I'm not going to read it for you. So that's a pretty typical response from Ohm. She speaks very cryptically and poetically. So someone saw some log files, but then when you try to cat them, they're empty or they don't exist. And what's funny is I didn't specifically write in the prompt exactly what kind of server she was on. I didn't say anything about Cowrie, just say like it behaves unexpectedly, it's degraded, users may find bash commands that should work don't actually work. So if they report that a bash command that should work is not working, just roll with it and say like, yeah, that happens when the system collapses. So out of the 4 servers in this challenge, only 3 of them use the OpenAI Assistance API. The 4th one does not. So I was trying to design a prompt that would generate text like this. This is a valid Markov chain from a specific piece of text. So a very long piece of text, I want to generate valid Markov chains from it. But I want to have some meaning, like kind of like refrigerator magnets. When you do the refrigerator magnet poetry, you're generating meaningful language from a limited set of bigrams and n-grams. And it turns out that this is the sort of problem that LLMs are terrible at. So generative AI, it's a probabilistic model that produces plausible sequences, and it does not obey the rules of finite state grammars. It cannot do that. Even if it tells you that it is perfectly obeying all the rules, it just throws random words in there. Like it speaks very stilted and Markov chain-like, and it limits its vocabulary, but it uses whatever vocabulary it wants in order to do that. LLMs are great at generating meaning, but not within the strict confines of rules that never existed in their training data. So this is not a common thing. They're not going to do it. So, yeah, anyway, so I ended up actually generating this, not with an LLM, but I went through the text myself and got all the bigrams, and I sat there for a while trying to piece them together, and I wrote like a couple dozen sentences, and it sort of randomly selects from those sentences to give sort of this text, which was a lot of fun. So I do see a few users in the logs that have actually figured this out and read between the lines, but most haven't quite figured it out. So maybe this one was a little bit weird, but I'm giving the hint to you guys. They're just really confused about it. Okay, so sorry about the trashed image quality. I think my lens was a little bit smudgy, but 15 minutes before I had to come give this talk, someone came up to me, told me the secret phrase, and revealed to me that they had won the challenge. So this is the winners, Chris and Lucas. So before I get to questions, I think that there's a question that may be on a lot of people's mind, which is why? So I have a full-time job, 2 kids, I take vacation time to come here, and I do programming on my vacation. So why do I do this? I think ultimately what I'm trying to do with this is keep alive a part of hacker culture that I think is sometimes lost, and that is the element of surprise, of absurdity and play. So finding something or building something that no one expected, and something like taking a very serious security research tool like SSH Honeypots and making it fun. So if you'd like to join me next year, here's my contact information. Ryan@ryanemitchell.com, and of course, if you'd like to do the challenge, sshroot@honeypotquest.com, and I don't know, try to guess the password. So, any other questions? No? Okay, I guess I answered everything.